The following movie scene provides a much more sinister explanation of why our news media is censored.
It gives me more of a thrill than watching an imaginary crisis grip the nation that I helped conceive and implement. Let me show you an example. The disappearing Amazon rainforest hoax. This one really helped us achieve our goals.
I thought it really was disappearing and millions of species were being lost.
Yes, me too. Mr. Rather, you mean this isn't true?
No. It's almost entirely a fabrication. Why do we create this myth?
I guess it must be to frighten people into doing what we want them to do. Or that's what I've heard.
And because it contains the elements necessary for a good fabricated crisis. Convince people that they may die of suffocation because the Amazon rainforest produces most of our oxygen and it creates fewer interests. It's an exciting story. And because it's happening in a foreign country, it reinforces the idea that a one-world government is needed to solve the crisis.
Isn't that kind of almost arrogant of the West to say you can't develop?
It is arrogant, but we're going to have to be. Sometimes socialism works.
Socialism works to help people out of poverty?
Yeah.
Virtually no Americans are going to go to the trouble of traveling to the Amazon to see for themselves. So it's easy to cover up.
You mean that the species are not disappearing by the millions?
No, not at all. Let's take a look at the cartel in action. The first clip you'll see is from an independent production, a myth-debunking documentary.
Why is the Amazon the center of so much international attention? How much peril is it really in?
They interviewed a chief proponent of the species extinction myth. Roll the video.
I actually use the estimate of 450 species a day becoming extinct worldwide.
Now, there's a legitimate environmentalist that has been blowing the whistle on this hoax, a man named Patrick Moore, amazingly, a founding member of Greenpeace.
In the 1970s, he drew international attention by challenging oil tankers. He was arrested for protecting Canada's baby seals.
Here he asks a crucial question.
There are actually electrons on a hard drive. I want a list of Latin names of actual species.
And no one can provide that list?
Nope.
They can't name a single species that has gone extinct?
They cannot name one species that went extinct last year. No, or the year before.
Can you name those species, or that's...
No, we can't.
Wow, I thought that story was real.
Let me see if I'm getting this correct. The cartel knows that this is a hoax, so the cartel makes sure that serious questions are never asked?
Now you're catching on. We can't create the effect we want on public policy unless we create false impressions. This is just one myth on this overall hoax, which has tremendous emotional appeal. There are people that understand how and why we create emotionally appealing hoaxes. Here's a clip of an Englishman who knows exactly what we're up to. Roll it.
You set up this pristine, pure, virginal rainforest against the greedy, ugly capitalists. Oh, what a glorious story. The fact it bears no resemblance to reality is not what they're particularly interested in. It's a set of images.
I thought the Amazon was disappearing. 10 or 20 football fields a minute. Is that a hoax too?
Yes, it is. We have spread that story.
With the new information, it may be as high as 2 or 3 football fields a second.
The truth is that the Amazon is the most intact major forest in the world, 90% untouched. If the disappearance figures we've been quoting were actually true, the Amazon would have disappeared years ago.
Wow, anyone can do that math. How do you get away with this?
It's our job to be watchdogs on hoaxes and government corruption, etc. But who scrutinizes us? Who's going to report our hoaxes?
I guess no one really has the same ability to reach the country that we do, to expose us.
Yes, and that is the key to our ability to deceive people.
This is more contrived than I ever imagined.
I don't know. I feel like I've entered the twilight zone here.
This is common in the induction ceremony. You'll adapt to it.
Talk to us about, in past wars, what was one of the first things that they generally took out?
I had a conversation with Paul Weyrich about this. He created a television company called NAT, National Empowerment Television, because he also saw the problem, and we hit off immediately because of this issue. I started pointing out to him that, like in the Philippine Revolution, the biggest and the bloodiest battles was over the television station, and in Romania the same thing happened, and then he pointed out in Panama the same thing happened, and it's true. Both sides know the most powerful institution in the country is the news media, especially the television news media, and that's why they don't go to the Air Force bases, they don't go to the power company, they go to the television stations. And in Romania, they just barely won that revolution because they're just barely able to hold on long enough to the television station for the people to turn against the army.
And so, in the United States, at least, we have public access. So you feel that that's at least one of the, at least the chance for the citizens that maybe, how about PBS?
Right. Well, I think PBS, because it's owned by the government, is an inherent problem that they're afraid to go after the government. I think public access television is a great idea. I think you and the whole team here are doing a wonderful job. You do, this is not censored, obviously, or I wouldn't be allowed to say
well,
what
I've tried a couple times.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there are a few checks and balances.
There are.
There's a little bit of leak. There's probably a whole lot of leak or some truth and the internet. So you do know that there is some things. So do you? Well, we've established that you think that the American media is censored.
Yes.
And do you have? You were talking about some baseball scores, weather.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, it depends what the issue is. If it's like say baseball scores or what today's weather is, they don't censor it because there's not a conflict of interest. They can't gain any power by giving you false baseball scores, but they can generate a lot of power on other issues. And in fact, the weather, they're willing to tell you accurately what yesterday's weather was. But when it comes to the global warming scare, that is not the case. The temperatures have not been rising. We have a chart on this over the last 2,500 years, and the temperature today is roughly the average temperature for the last 2,500 years. But they can scare people into thinking they need more government or maybe even global government to fight this thing that's going to kill everybody. Then they can grab a lot of power, and that is actually what they've done. And I can see the charts up on the TV screen now. You can see where we are right now is right here, which is right at the baseline. And for the last 10 years, global temperatures have been getting colder, actually a lot colder, 1.3 degrees. But this gets in the way of their motives, what they want to get across. So they just ignore the actual temperatures. They don't let people see the actual charts of global temperatures.
Do you want to expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The king of the global warming is a fellow named James Hansen at NASA. And so he's telling everyone today that the Earth is going to get 6 degrees hotter Fahrenheit. Okay. Well, someone just discovered a year ago that on the front page of the Washington Post in 1973, he said the exact opposite. He said that because of the same reason, carbon pollution, the use of fossil fuels, that the Earth was going to get 6 degrees colder, and that we're going into an ice age, and that unless we did something, cut the use of fossil fuels drastically within the next 5 years, it'd be irreversible. So according to him, we've been in an ice age for the last 30 years. Now he's saying the opposite with he has not in any way, explained how he's wrong. And also Time Magazine, is what's on the camera right now, in 1979, on their cover they're talking about how cold things were getting. So, and then today, the last year, things have been getting much colder. People are dying in the Midwest because it's so exceptionally cold, and they'll report it, but they don't relate it to global warming at all. The global warming thing where they claim that CO2 makes Earth hotter is not true. What happens is when the Earth gets hotter, the CO2 is boiled out of the oceans where most of the CO2 is, and so they have it absolutely backwards. What really drives the temperature of the Earth is solar radiation and volcanic eruptions, and the sun is not steady state. The sun gets hotter and colder, and right now it's going in a period where the sunspots are almost non-existent on the sun, and the sun is putting off less heat, and that's why we're getting colder.